Hello, my name is Heather Charles, and I would like to welcome you to my presentation on Dr. Janet Yellen, the 78th Secretary of the Treasury of the United States of America. Prepared for Fall B terms, Political Science 874 class, Public Sector Leadership. Born in 1946, Dr. Janet Yellen was raised in Brooklyn, New York, by her father, who was a physician, and her mother, who was an elementary school teacher, both of whom instilled in her an ethic of care and a desire to work a job, quote, as a means to help people, unquote, according to Dr. Janet Yellen herself. She got her undergraduate degree in economics in the 1960s at Pembroke College, which was the female resident college for Brown University, and pursued her graduate studies in the same field at Yale University. After school, she went on to hold a number of teaching positions at esteemed universities and colleges, including Harvard and UC Berkeley. At Harvard, she met her husband, Nobel laureate George Akerlof, and together they had a son named Robbie, who is now also a well-known economist. After her teaching career, it was back to DC to fill multiple roles, culminating in her current position as the 78th Secretary of the Treasury. Dr. Janet Yellen is truly a breaker of glass ceilings, having been the first woman to fill the role of leader in more than one position within the space of economics within the United States of America. Most recently, she has become the Treasury Secretary to current President Joe Biden. However, she is the first woman to hold this position and is the first person of any gender to achieve the government trifecta as a Council of Economic Advisors chair, a Federal Reserve's chair, and now Treasury Secretary. During her time serving in her current role, she has faced many unique challenges, least of all being the pandemic, which was still ongoing when she entered the position. Through her qualified and empathetic approach to economics, she has provided an excellent example of leadership through challenging, emotionally charged, and highly partisan times. When she was first approached about accepting the appointment to Treasury Secretary, she was hesitant. After consulting with her husband and son, she is said to have said, Maybe I really should do this. I feel an obligation. According to Omen Ullman's 2022 biography of Janet Yellen, Empathy Economics, what changed her mind was not the power and prestige of the post, nor the fact that she would be the first woman to occupy the job after more than 2 centuries of male Treasury secretaries. Those seemed secondary considerations to the key issues for her, which were, was she right for the job and could she make a difference? As she had done many times before considering other jobs during her remarkable career, she sat down with 2 distinguished economists, her husband and son, to hold the family council, where they carefully weighed the pros and cons and decided they would support her if she decided to turn down the Treasury position. But they argued that it was a very important job and that she could do a lot of good for the country, and if Biden really wanted her, she should take it. She agreed she would be in a position to help nurse the country back from the shock caused by COVID-19's pandemic and its shutdown. After all, that's why she studied economics in the first place, not to construct theoretical models for other academics, but to use economic tools to improve the economy, to gain more equality and ensure that everybody who wants to work can find a decent job at a fair wage. After much consideration, despite her concerns, Janet Yellen did accept President Biden's nomination to the position of Secretary of Treasury. The U.S. Treasury Department has a guiding mission statement as follows: to maintain a strong economy and create economic and job opportunities by promoting conditions that enable economic growth and stability at home and abroad, to strengthen national security by combating threats and protecting the integrity of the financial system, and finally, to manage the U.S. government's finances and resources effectively. As can be seen in the flow chart on this slide, the Treasury Department is quite large and covers multiple offices and bureaus. The Department of Treasury is one of the oldest departments in the federal government's executive branch. Laid out on their official government website, the Treasury Department, along with its top officers, were established by the First Congress of the United States of America in 1789. The department has a set of top officers, a comptroller, an auditor, a treasurer, and a register, all overseen by the head of the department, the Secretary of Treasury, along with the assistant to the Treasury. Famously, the first ever person to serve in the role of Secretary of Treasury was Founding Father Alexander Hamilton, who was first appointed to the role by President George Washington on September 11th of 1789. He remained in the position until 1795. According to its website, the Department of the Treasury is organized into two major components: the departmental offices and the operating bureaus. Perhaps slightly self-explanatory, the operating bureaus carry out specific functions and operations assigned to the department, while the departmental offices are responsible for policy formulation, along with the oversight and management of the department as a whole. One simple way to summarize the vastness of the areas covered by the Department of the Treasury is to say that any area of the economy, both domestic and foreign, and any of the record-keeping, transactions, collections, and enforcements associated with all of those areas fall under the purview of the department's official duties. Although historically the department has covered many areas which have now been moved into different or new standalone departments, such as the Coast Guard and the Postal Service, the department remains a key component of the United States of America's domestic and global operations and functioning. The role of the Secretary of the Treasury in specific fulfills many different important roles within the department and the executive branch of the federal government. Like all cabinet positions, the Treasury Secretary serves as a policy and general advisor to the President of the United States. In addition to this duty, the Secretary is responsible for formulating and recommending domestic and international financial, economic, and tax policy, and oversight of the department and its duties, including certain law enforcement responsibilities and the manufacturing of coins and currency. The department is a large one, with anywhere between 8,000 to 100,000 employees under its various bureaus and offices. The Secretary serves at the helm, overseeing these employees and the offices and bureaus they work for. The Secretary serves as chairperson and/or trustee on a number of domestic and international boards and councils. In addition to all of these roles and responsibilities as the Secretary, they serve as the Chief Financial Officer of the government, according to the department's website. When Dr. Janet Yellen stepped into the position of Secretary-Treasury, she faced many challenges. Once again, pulling from Ullman's biography, adding to the huge challenge before her was concern about what shape the Treasury Department was in after 4 years of Trump. He regarded career employees as agents of the deep state, which he wanted to destroy, not as the talented, experienced, and committed civil servants whom Yellen knew are responsible for keeping the government running smoothly and efficiently. He had decimated agencies such as the State Department and the EPA, and Yellen fretted that Treasury would have to be rebuilt at the same time that she would have to get up to speed on a myriad of policy issues. It was a daunting prospect going into the job. And while this did prove to be true, with many senior positions in the department needing to be filled by appointed positions, which her and her team had to choose and then have reviewed by the offices of the president, one position, which was already filled upon the job being offered to her, was that of Deputy Secretary. The Biden administration had chosen Wally Adeyemo to be this Deputy Secretary, and he was sworn in on March 26, 2021. His role in the department was to assist the Secretary of Treasury in the supervision and direction of the department and play a primary role in the formulation and execution of Treasury policies and programs in all aspects of the department's activities. Another position, which was filled this time by Janet and her team, was Treasurer of the United States. They chose Chief Marilyn Merelba to be the Treasurer of the United States. In addition to this role, she is also the 18th chief of the Mohegan tribe, being the first tribal chief to hold a top position in a United States cabinet. Dr. Janet Yellen's goals and strategies for the Department of Treasury can be seen in their fiscal year 2022 to 2026 strategic plan. It includes 5 goals, including 1, to promote equitable economic growth and recovery, specifically addressing the pandemic. 2, to enhance national security. 3, to protect financial stability and resiliency. 4, to combat climate change. And 5, to modernize Treasury operations. One of the biggest pieces of legislation that will no doubt define and shape the legacy of Dr. Janet Yellen's time as Secretary of the Department of Treasury is the Inflation Reduction Act. According to the Act's executive summary, in August 2022, Congress enacted the Inflation Reduction Act, giving the Internal Revenue Service a historic opportunity to transform the administration of the tax system and the services provided to taxpayers. The IRA provides us with approximately $80 billion over the next decade to significantly improve the way we serve the public. We will transform service to taxpayers by using this long-term funding to update technology capabilities and invest in our employees with new tools, skills, and capabilities. These resources will also ensure the fairness of the tax system by addressing the tax gap, the difference between taxes due and taxes paid, most recently estimated to be $496 billion. The IRS was of particular concern to Dr. Janet Yellen because during Republican control of Congress, the IRS's budget is often cut along with its staff being reduced. However, during the 2019 pandemic, there was an increase in the demand of duties which the IRS was expected to perform. including to recruit and retain a diverse and inclusive workforce. These last two goals were added by Dr. Yellen's administration. Another act which is crucial when discussing the legacy which Dr. Janet Yellen will have for her time as Treasury Secretary is the American Rescue Plan and the $1.9 trillion pandemic relief funds that her department was tasked with issuing and dispersing to the American public, businesses, local governments, tribal governments, and state governments. This will be discussed more in the case study section of this presentation. Only a few hours after swearing in as Secretary of the Treasury on January 26, 2021, Yellen issued a Day 1 message to her new department staff, beginning with, "My name is Janet Yellen. A short while ago, I was sworn in as the 78th Secretary of the Treasury. It's an incredible honor to join this team of 84,000 public servants. I can't overstate that. When President Biden asked if I would accept the position of Treasury Secretary, I said yes in large part because I knew who I would be working with." She then praised the hard work and determination of the department in handling the 2007 to 2009 financial crisis and laid out the four new crises that she wanted the department, to approach. Those being the economic damage from the COVID-19 pandemic, global warming, systematic racism, and income inequality. She said, "I know these are ambitious goals, and I am fully aware none of them will be accomplished by working exclusively with a small team out of the Secretary's office. Ours will have to be an inclusive department. That is why, over the next few weeks, I plan to meet with each office and bureau. I want to hear from you about what needs changing and what we can do better." Because this was still the height of the pandemic, much of these meetings had to be conducted virtually. When Dr. Yellen came into power at the Secretary of Treasury, she found that Steven Mnuchin had implemented a video conferencing system other than Zoom, and that this system had many deficiencies which made virtual meetings basically impossible to conduct. One of her first moves as Secretary of Treasury was to replace this system with the Zoom system, which finally allowed for efficient and effective meetings to be held across departments and with the entire department at once. She was able to hold town hall meeting style meetings with the entire department, every single member being able to see and hear her so that her mission and vision could be easily understood and coordinate the department's activities to act as one. Whereas Steven Mnuchin had tried to handle all of the pandemic recovery, distribution, and other policies by himself with just his small team of advisors, Janet Yellen decided to defer to department and bureau heads and create teams to work on these issues together. All of these are examples of her inclusive leadership and transformational leadership styles. Additionally, Janet Yellen differed from her predecessor Stephen Mnuchin and other predecessors in some key ways, including how she traveled. Often she would just fly coach and commercial flights whenever possible, most especially for domestic affairs. Other things she did at the department included creating new positions and restructuring the department so that it was able to more easily meet the demands from the pandemic. Janet Yellen's time as Secretary Treasury can be analyzed through three different frames. First, through the structural frame, considering her changes to departments such as the IRS, as well as other small changes she made in order to oversee the pandemic's COVID relief package disbursement to many individuals, state, local, and tribal governments. Her concern for the employees who worked under her support her approach through the human resource frame. She was very concerned with cuts to the IRS specifically, along with the extra demands placed on other areas and bureaus within the department from the pandemic COVID-19 relief package. From the perspective of the human resources frame, Janet Yellen's focus on her dedication to the workers the nature of the Department of Treasury and its many different branches of offices and bureaus underneath its purview show her strengths through the political frame, especially when it comes to the bargaining and negotiation she famously has done in support of the department's bureaus, along with the coordinating between these different groups and the many different offices and bureaus under the department in order to achieve a successful distribution of the $1.9 trillion relief package, along with the passing of the Inflation Reduction Act. The most demanding issue Yellen had to deal with in her first 6 weeks on the job was distribution of aid under the massive $1.9 trillion pandemic relief package known as the American Rescue Plan. Under this, the Treasury Department oversaw a historic and unprecedented provision of assistance to Americans directly and to state, local, and tribal governments, resulting in record job and small business growth and the lowest unemployment rate in over 50 years. Secretary Yellen said that the rescue plan provided critical relief and helped drive historic recovery that has not only meant that Americans are better off today, but it has allowed us to focus on what our economy will look like in 2030, not just 2023. The Treasury Department also committed to providing strong stewardship of the American Rescue Plan resources. The Treasury has built a risk-based, data-driven accountability framework designed to ensure that funds are used for their intended purposes and have the greatest impact in supporting a strong recovery. Specifically, the plan provided $1,400 checks to every member of a family making less than $150,000 a year, extended federal unemployment benefits for another 6 months, increased the child tax credit, provided subsidies for low-income people to purchase health insurance through Obamacare, and extended the earned income tax credit for low-income adults without children, as well as offered assistance to those at risk of homelessness. Dr. Janet Yellen has been quoted as saying, in order to facilitate these funds being dispersed, that we, quote, created a new Office of Recovery Programs and appointed a director to oversee all of the programs and ensure their effectiveness. The staff at the Treasury and at the IRS have played a heroic role in doing all of the extra work entailed. We had to work with the IRS to distribute economic impact payments, the $1,400 checks in the American Rescue Plan. We got the program up and running as we worked with the IRS, and we really wanted to make sure the checks got out quickly to everyone who qualifies. She said, "We didn't screw it up. They got out quickly." This was true. The first checks went out on March 12th, the day after Biden had signed the relief package into law, and by March 17th, the Treasury reported it had distributed 90 million payments by direct electronic deposit, totaling $242 billion. By April 7th, the Treasury had sent out 156 million payments, totaling $372 billion. And finally, in May, the department began distributing the $350 billion in emergency funding for state, local, territorial, and tribal governments. Deputy Treasury Secretary Wally Adeyemo is known to have been said that the key to managing so many aid distribution programs simultaneously was Yellen's decision to create a completely new structure at the Treasury to handle the mammoth task. Whereas Mnuchin had managed COVID-related aid programs himself with a small team of aides, she decided to delegate the responsibilities to the departments and support departments and bureaus like the IRS, who would be directly responsible for distributing these funds. Deputy Secretary Adeyemo added, "One thing Yellen gets less credit for than she should is for her focus on execution. She was very focused on how does the Treasury do an exceptional job in executing these programs, such as the child tax credit, which could reduce child poverty by 50% if properly executed." Child tax credit is another area of the American Rescue Plan where Janet Yellen and the Treasury Department saw success. By mid-July of that year, the Treasury Department and the IRS announced that they had distributed the first monthly payment of an expanded child tax credit to 39 million households, covering 88% of the children in the United States. Looking at how her and the department carried out the American Rescue Plan is not just an example of the Treasury Department's successes, but an example of Janet Yellen's style of leadership leading to success. By delegating roles and restructuring the department to better meet the needs of the pandemic relief package, Janet Yellen was able to successfully distribute over $1.9 trillion in aid relief over a very short period, while at the same time working with Congress and the President's office to fill roles at the Treasury Department which needed to be filled. Overall, Dr. Janet Yellen's time as Secretary of Treasury is an example of good transformational leadership in motion. Thank you for listening to my presentation.